words hit me like a physical blow, cutting through the warm June evening and the polite laughter of suburban neighbors. Well, maybe if we didn't have trailer trash showing up to our parties, we could actually enjoy ourselves. I stood there on the perfectly manicured lawn of 847 Maple Grove Drive, holding a red Solo cup of cheap beer that suddenly felt like lead in my weathered hands. The words came from Madison, my daughter-in-law, spoken just loud enough for the cluster of neighbors around the Weber grill to hear, but quiet enough that she could pretend it was a private comment to her friend Emily. But I heard every syllable, every cruel, calculated syllable. You won't believe how this story ends. Please hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. The neighborhood block party continued around me. Children running through sprinklers, the smell of barbecue mixing with freshly cut grass, the sound of ice clinking in glasses of wine that cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. This was supposed to be celebration community, the American dream made manifest in a subdivision where every house looked like it belonged in a magazine. This house, the house I'd helped them buy. Dad? My son Tyler appeared at my elbow, his voice carrying that familiar note of embarrassment that had become our theme song over the past 3 years. Everything okay? I looked at him, really looked at him, standing there in his pressed khakis and polo shirt, every inch the successful marketing executive, every inch his wife's perfect accessory. When had he stopped looking me in the eye? When had the boy who used to beg me for bedtime stories about my army days started treating me like a stain on his carefully curated life? "Everything's fine, son," I said, setting down the cup on a nearby patio table that cost more than my monthly rent. "Just fine." But nothing was fine tonight. Nothing had been fine for a long time. 3 years ago, when Tyler and Madison had found this house, this perfect suburban palace with its granite countertops and vaulted ceilings and 2-car garage, I'd been their hero, their savior. The retired sergeant who'd spent 24 years serving his country and had enough credit history and steady VA pension to co-sign their mortgage when their debt-to-income ratio came up just short of the bank's requirements. "Dad, you'd be helping us build our future," Tyler had said, sitting across from me in my small kitchen in Valley Vista Mobile Home Park. Madison had smiled, that practiced smile of hers, the one I'd later recognize as the expression she wore when she needed something. "It's not like you'd be responsible for payments or anything. Your name would just be on the paperwork. A formality." A formality. That's what they'd called it when I'd signed papers that made me legally responsible for a $485,000 mortgage. A formality when I'd used my military service record and pristine credit score to guarantee their slice of the American dream. "Mr. Davis." A voice interrupted my bitter memories. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down was standing beside me, her expression concerned. "Are you feeling all right? You look a bit pale." Before I could answer, Madison's voice carried across the patio again, louder, this time emboldened by wine and the appreciative chuckles of her audience. "I mean, some people just don't understand that there are standards in a neighborhood like this. Property values to maintain. A certain demographic expectation." My chest tightened. 24 years in the Army, including 2 tours in Iraq, and I'd faced enemy fire with less anxiety than I felt standing in my son's backyard, listening to his wife explain to their neighbors why I didn't belong. The mortgage company should really screen these co-signers better. Emily laughed, completely unaware that the man she was discussing stood 30 feet away. "I mean, what's to stop any random person from vouching for a loan they can't afford?" "Exactly," Madison agreed, taking a long sip of her wine. "Some people think that just because they helped out, they automatically get included in everything. They don't realize that charity has boundaries. Charity. She called 3 years of financial responsibility charity. Mrs. Chen was still watching me with that concerned expression, and I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear. I'd learned to manage fear in foxholes outside Fallujah. This was something else, something that felt like a dam breaking inside my chest. "Excuse me," I said quietly, walking toward the sliding glass doors that led into the house I'd helped them afford. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to remember how to breathe without feeling like my lungs were full of broken glass. The house was blissfully empty, everyone having migrated outside for the party. I stood in their living room, their immaculate living room with its white furniture and carefully arranged accent pillows, and tried to process what had just happened. The mortgage papers were in a file folder in their home office. I'd seen them there 6 months ago when I'd helped Tyler set up his new computer. My name right there in black and white. Co-signer William James Davis, responsible for all payments in the event of default by primary borrowers. Not a formality, a guarantee, a promise I'd made with my signature and my honor. Through the sliding glass doors, I could see Madison holding court by the pool. Her hands animated as she told some story that was making her friends laugh. Tyler stood nearby checking his phone, oblivious to the damage his wife had just done to what remained of our relationship. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my neighbor at the trailer park. "Poker game tonight at 7 if you're interested. Betty made her famous chili." I stared at the message, thinking about my little community of retirees and veterans and working-class families who had never once made me feel ashamed of my service or my circumstances. People who knew that a man's worth wasn't measured by his address or the thread count of his sheets. "Dad," Tyler had followed me inside, sliding the door closed behind him. "Look about what Madison said." "What exactly did Madison say, Tyler?" I turned to face him, my voice steadier than I felt. "Because I'd like to hear you repeat it. Out loud. To my face." He shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropping to the hardwood floors I'd helped them afford. She's had a lot of wine. You know how she gets at parties?" "No, son. I don't know how she gets at parties. Because until tonight I didn't know your wife thought I was trailer trash who brought down the neighborhood property values." The words hung between us like smoke from an extinguished fire. Tyler's face went pale, then red, cycling through emotions faster than I could track them. "She didn't mean it like that," he said finally. "Madison grew up differently than we did. She's still adjusting to having family with different backgrounds." Different backgrounds. As if my 24 years of military service and my modest retirement home were character flaws that needed accommodating. "Tyler," I said, my voice dropping to the tone I'd used with young soldiers who were about to make decisions that would define their lives. "Do you remember what I told you about respect when you were 12 years old?" He nodded reluctantly. "Tell me." "That respect isn't given. It's earned. And once someone shows you they don't respect you, believing they'll change is just setting yourself up for more disappointment. Smart boy, your mother raised you right." I walked toward the front door, my decision crystallizing with each step. Tell Madison thanks for the party. Tell her it was illuminating. "Dad, wait. Where are you going?" I paused with my hand on the doorknob, looking back at my son. This man I'd raised to be better than this, standing in a house I'd helped him afford, defending a woman who'd just publicly humiliated the father who'd made their lifestyle possible. "I'm going home, Tyler. To my trailer, where the trash belongs." The drive back to Valley Vista Mobile Home Park took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to process 3 years of accumulated slights and subtle humiliations. 12 minutes to realize that I'd been so focused on helping my son achieve his dreams that I'd forgotten to protect my own dignity. The evening air was cooler here, carrying the scent of Mrs. Rodriguez's jasmine and the sound of children playing in the community center playground. No manicured lawns or property value discussions. Just working people living honest lives without apology. I sat on my small front porch, looking out at a community that had never once made me feel like I needed to explain or justify my existence. People who understood that military service was honor, not charity. People who knew the difference between helping family and being taken advantage of by family. My phone rang at 9:47 p.m. Tyler's number flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then I opened my laptop and began researching something I probably should have looked into 3 years ago. The legal implications of co-signing a mortgage, and more specifically, the process for removing one's name from a loan agreement. The research kept me awake until 3 a.m. that night. Coffee grew cold beside my laptop as I discovered something that should have terrified me, but instead felt like finding water in a desert. I could remove myself as co-signer from Tyler and Madison's mortgage. But there was a catch. One that would change everything. Under Washington state law, co-signer withdrawal triggered an immediate review of the borrower's current financial standing. If they couldn't qualify for the loan independently, and I was beginning to suspect they couldn't, the bank had the right to demand full payment within 30 days or begin foreclosure proceedings. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of my small living room, thinking about the 3 years that had led to this moment. 3 years of slow erosion, like water wearing away stone, until I barely recognized the relationship I had once had with my son. It hadn't started with cruelty. It had started with small things, thoughtless things. The first sign came 2 months after they'd moved into the house. Tyler called on a Thursday evening, his voice carrying that casual entitlement that I was beginning to recognize. "Hey, Dad, quick question. Madison's having the neighbors over for a wine tasting next weekend, and she's worried the front yard doesn't make the right impression. You know anything about landscaping? A little?" I'd said, thinking he wanted advice. "Your mother always said I had a green thumb." "Great. Could you come by Saturday morning, maybe bring your truck? We need about 20 bags of mulch and some flowering bushes. Madison picked everything out. It's all at Home Depot waiting for pickup." I'd spent that Saturday in 90-degree heat digging flower beds and spreading mulch while Madison hosted her wine tasting inside the air-conditioned house. When I'd finished around 4 o'clock, sweat-soaked and exhausted, I'd knocked on the front door to let them know I was done. Madison answered, holding a glass of white wine, her makeup perfect despite the summer heat. "Oh, you're finished already? That's wonderful." She glanced past me at the landscaping, nodding approvingly. "Tyler's writing you a check for the supplies. $240, right? Not a thank you, not an offer of water or a cold beer. Just confirmation that I'd pay for materials to improve their property value." "Madison," I'd said carefully, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was helping his family, not working as your landscaper." Her smile had faltered slightly. "Oh, well, we just assumed. I mean, Tyler said you'd offered to help with the yard work." Help? Not finance their home improvement projects. That night, Tyler had called to smooth things over. "Dad's sorry about the confusion. Madison grew up with hired help. You know, she's still learning how family relationships work." I'd let it slide. Family, I'd told myself. Sometimes family means being patient while people learn. But the learning never seemed to happen. 3 months later, Madison called me directly. "Bill, I hope you don't mind me asking, but do you know anything about appliances? Our dishwasher is making this horrible grinding noise, and the repair guy wants $300 just to look at it. I'd driven over after work expecting to tighten a loose part or clean out a filter. Instead, I'd found a dishwasher that was beyond repair. The motor was shot, and the interior was damaged from someone forcing oversized pots into spaces where they didn't fit. It's dead, I told them after an hour of diagnosis. You'll need a new one. Oh, no. Madison had set her hand flying to her chest in theatrical distress. And right before Tyler's promotion review. We can't afford a major appliance purchase right now. Tyler had nodded gravely. Dad, I hate to ask, but could you spot us for a dishwasher? Just until my promotion comes through, we'd pay you back with the first paycheck. The dishwasher had cost $800. The promotion had indeed come through 6 weeks later, along with a celebratory weekend trip to wine country that cost considerably more than $800. The repayment never materialized, but mentions of it stopped after Tyler explained that the promotion had actually come with more responsibility, but not much additional money. You understand how it is, Dad. Corporate America, you know. They pile on the work, but keep the budgets tight. I'd understood. I'd understood that my son had learned to treat his father like a bank with flexible payment terms. The pattern had established itself with depressing consistency. Madison's car needed new tires. Could I help? Their heating system required maintenance before winter. Did I know anyone reliable? The fence between their yard and the neighbors needed repair after a storm. Surely I had time over the weekend. Each request came with the same implied understanding. Family helps family, and questioning the frequency or cost of such help revealed a suspicious, ungenerous spirit. But it was the way they'd started treating me during these help sessions that had begun eating away at my self-respect like acid. Dad, could you use the side entrance? Madison had asked last spring when I'd arrived to fix their garbage disposal. We're having people over for brunch, and you know how it is. No, I hadn't known how it was. I'd asked. Well, you'll be dirty from the work, and our friends are. They're Tyler's colleagues. It's a professional thing. Professional. As if my presence would somehow contaminate their carefully curated social gathering. Tyler had tried to soften it later. She didn't mean anything by it, Dad. Madison just gets anxious about hosting. She wants everything to be perfect. Perfect apparently meant erasing any evidence that their lifestyle was subsidized by a man who lived in a trailer park. The breaking point should have come last Christmas, but I'd been too stubborn to see it clearly. Madison had called 3 days before the holiday. Bill, I need to ask you about Christmas dinner. My mother's flying in from Connecticut, and she's very particular about traditions. Would you mind if we kept it small this year? Just immediate family. Immediate family. Her mother, who she saw twice a year. Not me, who'd been part of Tyler's life for 28 years. Where would you like me to go for Christmas? I'd asked quietly. Oh, you could come by later. Maybe for dessert. Mom usually goes to bed early, so we could visit then. Dessert. After the meal, I wouldn't be good enough to share, but before anyone had to acknowledge the awkwardness of excluding me from the main event. I'd spent Christmas Day at the VA hospital visiting veterans who had no family at all. Men who'd served their country and found themselves alone in their final years, grateful for any human connection on a day dedicated to family. At least they hadn't been exiled by the children they'd raised. Now, sitting in my dark living room at 3 a.m., researching the legal mechanisms of co-signer withdrawal, I finally understood what my mother had meant when she'd told me years ago. Billy's, sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you'd do anything to help. Madison's words at the block party hadn't been a momentary lapse in judgment. They'd been the culmination of 3 years of systematic disrespect, the final honest expression of how she'd always seen me as trailer trash, whose only value was his signature on their mortgage papers. My phone buzzed with a text message. Tyler at 3:17 a.m. Dad, can we talk tomorrow? Madison feels terrible about tonight. I stared at the message, thinking about 3 years of feeling terrible without ever changing behavior. 3 years of apologies that preceded requests for money or free labor. 3 years of being their personal ATM dispensing cash. And services whenever they pressed the right emotional buttons. I deleted the message without responding and opened my laptop again. If Madison felt terrible, she was about to feel considerably worse. Because I'd found something in my research that changed everything. The co-signer withdrawal could be executed immediately without borrower consent, provided proper legal notice was given. 30 days. That's how long Tyler and Madison would have to qualify for a $485,000 mortgage on their own, without my credit worthiness backing them up. I'd spent 3 years learning what it felt like to be taken for granted. Now they were about to learn what it felt like to stand on their own. The irony was almost poetic. The woman who'd called me trailer trash was about to discover that her dream house was built on a foundation that could be removed with a single phone call. I closed the laptop and walked to my window, looking out at Valley Vista Mobile Home Park in the pre-dawn darkness. In 6 hours, I'd call my lawyer. In 7 hours, Tyler and Madison's world would start falling apart. And for the first time in 3 years, that thought didn't make me sad. It made me smile. At exactly 9 a.m. Monday morning, I called James Morrison, the lawyer who'd handled my divorce paperwork 15 years earlier. Some conversations change everything, and I knew this would be one of them. Bill Davis. Jim's voice carried the warmth of old friendship. Haven't heard from you in years. How's retirement treating you? It's been educational, I said, settling into my kitchen chair with my second cup of coffee. Jim, I need to understand something about co-signer withdrawal on a mortgage. Hypothetically speaking. There was a pause. Lawyers, I'd learned, didn't believe in hypothetical questions from clients who called on Monday mornings. Talk to me, Bill. I told him everything. The 3 years of exploitation, the Christmas exclusion, Madison's comment at the block party. When I finished, the silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Jesus, Bill, Jim finally said. Your own son? My own son, I confirmed, who stood there and watched his wife humiliate me in front of strangers. Okay. Here's what you need to know, and I want you to understand this completely before we proceed. In Washington State, you have the absolute right to withdraw as co-signer with 30 days written notice. But Bill, and this is crucial, if Tyler and Madison can't qualify for the mortgage independently, the bank will demand immediate payment in full or begin foreclosure. I'd known this from my research, but hearing it from a lawyer made it real. What are the chances they can qualify on their own? You co-signed because they couldn't qualify 3 years ago, right? What's changed? Tyler's income, their debt-to-income ratio, their credit scores. I thought about Madison's shopping habits, Tyler's expensive car lease, their lifestyle that required constant financial infusions from their personal ATM. Nothing's changed for the better, I said. Then they're screwed, Jim said bluntly. Bill, this isn't just about removing your name from paperwork. This is about potentially forcing them into foreclosure. You understand that? I looked out my kitchen window at Mrs. Rodriguez hanging laundry on her line. Simple, honest. No pretense about property values or neighborhood demographics. I understand perfectly, I said. How quickly can you file the paperwork? 2 hours later, I sat in Jim's office while he prepared the co-signer withdrawal notice. The legal language was precise and unforgiving. William James Davis hereby provides 30 days written notice of his intent to withdraw as co-signer on mortgage account 144847291, effective July 15, 2024. Once I file this with the bank, there's no going back, Jim warned. You sure about this? I thought about Madison's voice carrying across that perfectly manicured lawn, trailer trash. I thought about 3 years of being treated like hired help while financing their dreams. File it, I said. The paperwork went to Wells Fargo that afternoon via certified mail. I kept the tracking receipt in my wallet like a talisman, checking it obsessively as the package made its way through the postal system. Delivered Tuesday, June 25th, 10:47 a.m. I gave them exactly 48 hours before I called Tyler. He answered on the second ring, his voice strained. Dad, we need to talk. Something's happened with our mortgage. I imagine it has, I said calmly. Did you get the notice, Doc? Silence, then. You did this? You actually did this? I removed my name from a mortgage I should never have co-signed for people who treat me like garbage. Yes, Tyler, I did this. Dad, they're demanding payment in full within 30 days, the entire mortgage balance. We don't have $500,000 lying around. Then I suggest you figure something out. Maybe Madison's parents can help. They summer in Connecticut, right? Surely people of their caliber have that kind of liquidity. This isn't funny, Dad. We could lose our house. Your house, I corrected. I was never welcome there anyway. Remember Christmas? Tyler's voice cracked. I know we've made mistakes, but this is nuclear. You're destroying our lives over one stupid comment. One comment? I laughed, surprising myself with the bitterness. Tyler, that comment was the period at the end of a 3-year sentence. The landscaping I paid for and installed while you entertained inside. The dishwasher I bought because you couldn't afford it, but somehow had money for wine country weekends. The Christmas dinner I wasn't good enough to attend, but your mother-in-law was. We can fix this. We can change. How? By treating me with respect until you need money again. By including me in family gatherings until someone more important shows up. I'm 62 years old, son. I don't have time to wait for you to grow a backbone. The call ended badly with Tyler desperate and me unmoved. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years, control. Madison called that evening, her voice honey-sweet with panic. Bill, I need to apologize for Saturday night. I was completely out of line, and I'm mortified about what I said. Tyler told me about the mortgage situation, and I'm hoping we can work something out. I'm listening. I said, curious about what exactly constituted an apology from someone who'd never been wrong before. I grew up in a different environment, and sometimes I say things without thinking about how they sound. I never meant to imply that you weren't welcome in our home or our family. Madison, I interrupted gently. What exactly did you mean to imply when you called me trailer trash in front of your neighbors? The silence was deafening. I was stressed about the party and you decided to blame your stress on the man who co-signed your mortgage and spent 3 years subsidizing your lifestyle. The man who wasn't good enough for Christmas dinner, but was good enough to guarantee your debt. Bill, please, we can't lose this house. It's our home, our future. It was never your future, Madison. It was my credit score and your monthly payments. Without me, you never qualified for this life. What do you want, money? We can start paying you back for everything. I don't want money, I said, my voice steady. I want dignity, I want respect, I want to stop being treated like the embarrassing uncle who shows up asking for handouts when I'm the one who's been providing them. We can give you that. We will give you that. You had 3 years to give me that. You chose to give me landscaping projects and side entrances instead. Madison's composure finally cracked. You can't do this. We have neighbors' obligations, a reputation in this community. People will know we were foreclosed on. People will know you couldn't afford the life you were living without Daddy's help, I corrected. Maybe that's a lesson worth learning. The line went dead. Over the next 2 weeks, Tyler called repeatedly. Sometimes angry, sometimes pleading, always desperate. They'd approached 3 different lenders about refinancing. All had declined. Madison's parents, it turned out, were heavily leveraged themselves and couldn't help. Their friends and colleagues who'd enjoyed so many wine tastings and dinner parties suddenly became unavailable when asked for loans. Dad, there has to be something, Tyler said during his final call. Some way to fix this. There is, I said. You can sell the house, pay off the mortgage, and buy something you can actually afford, like adults do. We'll lose everything we've put into this place. You didn't put anything into this place, Tyler. I did. You just lived in it. 3 days before the foreclosure deadline, I got the call I'd been expecting. Mr. Davis, this is Jennifer Walsh from Wells Fargo's foreclosure department. I'm calling to inform you that the property at 847 Maple Grove Drive will be going to public auction next Tuesday at 10 a.m. As the former co-signer, you have the right to bid along with other interested parties. Thank you, I said. I'll be there. That weekend, I drove through Tyler and Madison's neighborhood, looking at comparable properties and their sale prices. Similar houses in Maple Grove Estates had recently sold for anywhere from $420,000 to $510,000. But foreclosure auctions were different. Properties often sold for significantly less than market value, especially when bidders had to bring cash. I'd been conservative with money my entire life. 24 years of military discipline followed by 15 years of careful retirement planning. My savings account combined with my home equity and VA benefits could cover a cash purchase up to about $350,000. If I was going to do this, and I was increasingly certain I was, I needed to be strategic. Monday night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I found myself sitting on my small front porch, looking up at stars that seemed brighter here in my trailer park than they ever had in Tyler's subdivision. Tomorrow, I would bid on my son's house. Tomorrow, I would either get justice or get outbid by someone else seeking a bargain. Either way, Tyler and Madison would learn what it felt like to lose everything they'd taken for granted. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Dad, if you do this, we'll never speak again. I looked at the message for a long time, thinking about 3 years of being taken for granted, humiliated, and excluded. 3 years of financing people who were ashamed of me. I typed back, Son, we stopped speaking a long time ago. Tomorrow, I'm just making it official. Then I turned off my phone and went inside to set my alarm. The auction started at 10 a.m. sharp, and I intended to be early. After all, I had a house to buy. The county courthouse steps were crowded at 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Vultures, my father would have called them. Investors circling distressed properties, looking for deals built on other people's misfortune. I'd once judged such people harshly. Now I was one of them. I wore my best suit, the same navy blue I'd worn to Tyler's college graduation, and carried a leather portfolio containing cashier's checks totaling $340,000. Everything I'd saved for 30 years liquidated into the currency of justice. First time at a foreclosure auction. The woman beside me was maybe 40, wearing expensive sunglasses and studying a tablet. Professional flipper, I guessed. First time bidding, I said. Been watching for a while. She nodded toward the property listing. Nice house. Shame about the owners. I heard their young got in over their heads. These kinds of situations are always tragic. Tragic. I suppose that was one way to look at it. At 9:40, Tyler's BMW pulled up across the street. I watched my son and daughter-in-law climb out, their faces drawn with the particular exhaustion that comes from weeks of sleepless nights and failed solutions. Madison wore oversized sunglasses, but I could see her shoulders shaking. Tyler's movements were mechanical, defeated. They didn't see me in the crowd. I was just another face among the predators come to pick apart their dreams. The auctioneer, a thin man with a voice that carried across the courthouse lawn, called for attention at exactly 10 a.m. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here for the foreclosure sale of 847 Maple Grove Drive, Spokane, Washington. Beautiful 4-bedroom, 3-bath home in desirable Maple Grove Estates. Property is being sold, as is where is with all inspections waived. Opening bid starts at $380,000. My heart hammered. I'd researched extensively, but $380,000 was higher than I'd hoped. Still within my range, but barely. Do I hear $380,000? A hand shot up from the back. Professional flipper, probably. $380,000 to bidder 12. Do I hear $385,000? This was it. The moment 3 years of humiliation had been building toward. I raised my hand. $385,000 to bidder 7. Do I hear $390,000? The bidding accelerated. $390,000. $395,000. $400,000. Each increment felt like a nail in Tyler and Madison's coffin, and each nail cost me $5,000 more than I'd wanted to spend. At $415,000, the crowd thinned. Only 3 bidders remained: myself, the professional flipper, and a young couple who looked like they were hunting for their first home. $420,000. The flipper called out confidently. I looked across the street where Tyler stood frozen, watching strangers decide the fate of his life. Madison had her face buried in her hands. For a moment, just a moment, I felt something that might have been sympathy. Then I remembered her voice at the block party trailer trash. $425,000, I said clearly. The young couple dropped out, too rich for first-time buyers. $430,000, the flipper countered, but I heard hesitation in her voice. $435,000. My voice was steady, but my palms were sweating. Long pause. The flipper was calculating profit margins, renovation costs, market timing. I was calculating justice. Going once at $435,000 to bidder 7. The flipper shook her head and stepped back. Going twice at $435,000. I glanced across the street. Tyler was staring directly at me now, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and finally horror. He grabbed Madison's arm, pointing in my direction. Sold $435,000 to bidder 7. Please report to the clerk's office for paperwork processing. Madison's scream carried across the courthouse lawn. Not grief, pure animalistic rage. No, he can't do this. That's my house. That's my house. Tyler was running toward me, pushing through the dispersing crowd. His face was red veins bulging in his neck. Dad, what the hell have you done? I stood my ground as he approached, my military training kicking in. Never show weakness when someone's trying to intimidate you. I bought a house, Tyler, at a very reasonable price. You destroyed our lives, our home, our marriage for what? Because Madison hurt your feelings. Because Madison showed me exactly what you both think of me, I said calmly. And because you stood there and let her do it. Madison had caught up, tears streaming down her face, her perfect composure completely shattered. You evil, vindictive old man. We're homeless because of you. Homeless. Several people had stopped to watch the drama. The auctioneer was looking nervous, probably wondering if he needed to call security. Madison, I said quietly, you're homeless because you couldn't afford the life you were living. I just stopped enabling it. We gave you everything, Tyler shouted. We included you in our lives, our home. You gave me yard work, I interrupted. You gave me side entrances so your friends wouldn't have to see me. You gave me Christmas dessert after your mother-in-law went to bed. You never gave me respect. Madison lunged forward, and for a moment I thought she might actually attack me. I'll sue you. This is elder abuse manipulation. Sue me with what lawyer? I asked. You're about to be evicted from a house you never owned. Maybe your parents can help. The ones who summer in Connecticut. That stopped her cold. Tyler's face went pale as the reality sank in. Dad, please. We can work this out. We can fix our relationship. Just don't do this. Tyler, I said, my voice gentler now. Our relationship was broken long before today. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. I walked toward the courthouse to complete the paperwork, leaving them standing on the sidewalk. Behind me, I could hear Madison sobbing and Tyler trying to console her with empty promises about finding a solution. There was no solution. Not anymore. The paperwork took 2 hours. Cashier's checks, title transfers, deed recording. By 12:30 p.m., I was the legal owner of 847 Maple Grove Drive. The house I'd helped them buy was now officially mine. I drove to the property immediately. Tyler's BMW was in the driveway and I could see them through the front window boxing up their belongings. Moving fast, probably trying to get out before I arrived. I sat in my truck for a few minutes looking at the house that had cost me $435,000 and my relationship with my son. It was beautiful. No denying that. Perfect landscaping I'd installed myself. Windows that gleamed in the afternoon sun. A 2-car garage, vaulted ceilings, granite countertops. Everything Madison had insisted they deserved. Tyler came out first, carrying boxes to his car. He saw me and stopped, his shoulders sagging. How long do we have? He asked quietly. Legally, I could have you removed immediately. But I'm not a monster, Tyler. You have until Sunday. 5 days. 5 days to find somewhere that accepts people who've been foreclosed on. Should be educational. Madison appeared in the doorway, her face swollen from crying. Where are we supposed to go? I heard Valley Vista Mobile Home Park has some vacancies, I said. Rents reasonable, neighbors are friendly. Of course you'd have to get used to living around trailer trash. Her face contorted with fury, but Tyler grabbed her arm before she could speak. We'll be out by Sunday, he said. Good. I started to walk toward the front door, then paused. Tyler, the key to the garage is hanging on the hook by the kitchen door. The garbage disposal switch is finicky. You have to hold it down for 3 seconds. And the sprinkler system runs on Tuesdays and Fridays at 6 a.m. Why are you telling me this? Because it's my house now, and I want to take care of it properly. Sunday evening, I moved into 847 Maple Grove Drive. My few belongings looked sparse in rooms designed for a family with expensive tastes, but the space felt clean, honest. I set up my laptop in the kitchen, where I'd once sat drinking coffee, while Tyler asked for money, and I opened my email. 47 messages from Tyler over the past week, ranging from angry to pleading to heartbroken. I deleted them all without reading them. At 8 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down, holding a casserole dish. "Mr. Davis, I'm Sandra Chen. I wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." I opened the door genuinely surprised. "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Chen. Please call me Sandra. I have to ask, are you related to the previous owners? You seem familiar." "I'm Tyler's father," I said simply. Her eyes widened. "Oh my, that's complicated." "Yes, it is." She handed me the casserole. "Well, for what it's worth, you seem like good people." And honestly, some of us were getting tired of Madison's attitude about the neighborhood standards. That night, I sat on the deck I'd helped Tyler pay for eating Sandra's tuna casserole and watching the sunset over Spokane. My phone sat silent on the table beside me. No calls from Tyler. No texts demanding explanations or offering reconciliation. For the first time in 3 years, no one needed money from me. No one was asking me to prove my worth through labor or loans. No one was explaining why I wasn't good enough for their company. I was a 62-year-old man sitting alone in a $500,000 house estranged from my only child. By any reasonable measure, this should have felt like defeat. Instead, it felt like victory. The next morning, I called Valley Vista Mobile Home Park and put my old place up for rent. Mrs. Rodriguez cried when I told her I was moving, but she understood. "Mijo," she said in her mix of English and Spanish. "Sometimes we have to choose our own dignity over other people's comfort." 3 months later, Tyler sent me a single text. "Madison left me. Said I was weak for not fighting harder to keep the house. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the message for a long time, sitting in my beautiful kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. I thought about responding. I thought about calling him. I thought about offering him a place to stay while he rebuilt his life. Instead, I deleted the message and made myself a sandwich. Some lessons have to be learned alone. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt with words. But sometimes, just sometimes, the view from the other side is worth the fire it took to cross over. These days I host poker games in my living room. Sandra and her husband come along with 3 other neighbors who've become genuine friends. We drink beer that costs less than Madison's wine, tell stories that matter more than her social climbing, and laugh without worrying about property values or demographic expectations. Tyler drives by sometimes. I see his car slow down as he passes, and I wonder what he's thinking. Whether he's learned anything about respect. Whether he misses having a father more than he misses having a bank account. I wonder, but I don't ask. Some questions are too expensive to pursue, and some answers come too late to matter. But I sleep well in my beautiful house surrounded by neighbors who value character over credit scores. And every morning when I wake up, I remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst impulses. Even when that someone is your son, especially when that someone is your son. Thank you for listening to this story. If it's moved you to think about the relationships in your own life, that's enough. Sometimes the most important conversations we have are the ones we have with ourselves about what we're willing to accept and what we're brave enough to change. Until next time, remember, family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. And respect, like trust, must be earned, even by the people we love most.